Hey, this is Jeff. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and join us at the table as we talk to another great leader about faith, church, and leadership. Welcome to the Leadership Drip. Rob, welcome back to Leadership Drip, friend.
I am, I was going to say dripping with coffee, but I don't know if in today's lingo, can I say that? Does
I
that
don't
mean
know.
I have like diamonds?
I don't know. I think so. I think that means like you got gold and diamonds, which neither one of us are currently sporting.
You know, back in the 90s and 80s,
Before
you were born, Hannah.
Segue right to our guest perfectly.
I used to wear the gold chains, you know what I'm saying?
Since we've let the cat out of the bag, Hannah Gronowski is at the table with us today.
That's exactly right.
She is the CEO, founder of Generation Distinct. Generation Distinct is a nonprofit with the mission to equip young leaders, which we love, to discover the wrong they were born to make right. Brand new book out, an e-course. They're doing some things, Rob, that are just incredible. Yeah. And she's a Chicagoan. Welcome to the show.
Proud to be. I'm really proud. I always tell people I'm on a mission to just help everyone in the world understand that Chicago actually is the best city in the world. So
gotcha.
I'm so glad that you led with the idea that the fact that I'm a Chicagoan.
So there's two questions I got to answer, and this determines our friendship, right?
Okay.
So are you north side or south side?
North side.
Oh, I knew it. I knew she was right. She was right with the Lord.
The north side is safe.
So those who don't know, the north side is the Cubs, obviously the best team. The south side is the Sox, or other words we won't use on this show.
Yeah.
So north sider. And then the second follow-up question, because this one now is a little more tricky.
Yeah.
Chicago style pizza.
Okay, so the common debate is Lou Malnati's versus Giordano's.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously Lou Malnati's because there really is only one right answer there.
Right.
But the actual right answer is neither, because it's actually Pisano's, which is not a big chain, and it's just like a little place downtown Chicago.
So now we got to figure out how to get some Pisano's, Rob.
Do they freeze dry their pizza and send it to you like someone?
Freeze dry. Malnati's does ship pizza. That is a reality.
Okay.
Now, so there's a couple things about Chicago, and we will get to real content in a minute. But
pizza is
one of them.
Pizza is content.
Portillo's Italian beef, out of this world. Now they've spread out, like they're in like Florida and Arizona, but when you go to Chicago and get Portillo's Italian beef, I'm telling you what, there's nothing like it.
All right.
Portillo's is well respected. Here's an uncommon opinion.
Oh my gosh, this is like I'm being dropped wisdom of Chicago.
Yeah. I really do. I think it's overrated. I think it's become like, everyone goes to Portillo's, but always like there's also one every 15 minutes, so it's not that special. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we have Portillo's in California.
Yeah.
I mean, like in SoCal, we have Portillo's.
It's originated in Chicago. Yeah. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All that aside, now that I'm hungry, I'm gonna have to probably eat Mexican for lunch. But
yeah, exactly.
Tell us a little bit about how you came to discover or launch this concept or organization called Generation Distinct.
So I was gifted with the incredible opportunity to be raised in a really great, creative, fun church. My parents gave me a great picture of who Jesus was. They were kind of both first generation Christians. And so I got a really great picture of Jesus. So I don't really remember a time when I didn't want to follow Jesus. I always saw him as this really exciting adventure. And so when I was 16, I was like, I'm in with Jesus. I love this thing. I love my church. But I'm seeing a lot of injustice around me. I'm recognizing the pain in the world, and I want to do something about it. And I was like a super big dreamer, always have been, probably always will be. And so naturally at 16, I wanted to start the next organization that was going to change the world and defeat injustice all around me, like in 24 hours and just do it all, right? And so it kind of all culminated on this moment where I prayed and I said, God, I will do whatever you want with my life.
Yeah.
Sorry. Wow. Did that just cut out for you guys or no?
No.
Okay. Wow. We're struggling here. We're going to get through this.
The devil that's in this conversation.
We need some Alex.
Like, what just
Where's Alex at?
So it culminated in this moment where I said, God, I will do whatever it is you want me to do. Here is my life. What is it that you want me to do with my one and only life here?
Yeah.
And it was this moment. I was sitting on a couch in my parents' family room, and I was reading this book about injustice as I was kind of praying these prayers, and I felt like I was just being moved by these injustices. And I would read a chapter about homelessness in America, right? And I would think, oh my goodness, this is my passion, to go save all the homeless people, right? And then I'd turn the page to me about, orphans across the globe, and I would think, oh no, never mind. This is my passion, I'm gonna go save all the orphans, right? And then I flip the page to me about human trafficking, and I would think, oh, never mind, I'm gonna go save all the girls, right? And so it got to this point at the end of this book presenting all these injustices that I thought, God, I don't understand. I feel like my heart is moving towards all these injustices. What does this mean for my life? Like, what do you want me to do here? And that was kind of the first clear impression I ever received from God. I felt like he was saying, Hannah, you're not called to solve all of the injustice in this world. Instead, I want to use you to empower a generation to solve injustice in this world. And in so doing, you'll have a greater impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at 16, I remember running up to my little bedroom at the time, and I had this whiteboard, and man, I just started drawing out all these ideas and plans for what it would be like if I could equip my generation, my peers, to not just know about injustice, but to have some sort of strategy or plan to actually solve injustice. And what if we could pair the incredible passion of the next generation with incredible strategy? And what would we see unleashed in our world? We'd see justice and hope and truth and transformation. And so that was kind of the first spark of this idea of Generation Distinct. And then fast forward, I was watching, just as I grew older, around 20, I was watching my generation starting to walk away from Jesus.
Yeah.
And I was confused, because for me, following Jesus had always been the greatest adventure, had always been following Jesus into the margins, into caring for people, into changing the world. But I was asking these people, why are you leading the church? Like, what's going on here? They would say, I'm passionate about injustice. I'm passionate about changing the world. And I don't see the opportunity to do that when I'm following Jesus, when I'm in this confining organism of the local church.
Yeah.
And so my heart started to break, and I realized that we had to do something about this. And I realized, what if we could help the next generation understand that it's not just that Jesus is okay with your pursuit of justice. It's not okay that he's not just okay with your pursuit of changing the world, but really you have this passion and this drive and this desire to change the world, to bring justice into the world, because God actually placed that within you, because that's a piece of his image that's within you. If we could help the next generation understand that, wow, how much more would we see the next generation come back into the church and be even more committed to Jesus than any generation that has ever existed. And so Generation Distinct was birthed out of this passion. Wow, what if we could actually help the generation around us to experience what it's like to join Jesus in his mission to change things? And then what if we actually gave them a strategy to do it? It wasn't just a good idea. We helped them build strategy to actually accomplish it. And that's really what we do today.
That's so cool. I mean, I think one of the best things about having a conversation with you, besides the fact that your passion and your energy, which we love, negate the whole pizza thing, which is also a wonderful component. But seriously, one of the great things about having a conversation with you is that you are both leading in the way that we desire to reach young adults, but also you're contemporary. So your voice is so unique because you're leading at a very high level, obviously accomplishing a lot of great things, with the book release that came out recently, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, but you're also empowering your own peers in your generation. I think that is such a unique piece of the puzzle. So being only 25, that's your words, not mine, right?
Yes.
Not calling out a lady's age. I know that is not appropriate, but she said it, not me. So 25, obviously you don't have everything figured out, right?
That's
I mean, that's fair, right? I mean,
that's right.
At our
age, and
we
we're not saying our age. We're not gonna tell you our age, but at our age, we still don't have everything figured out. And I'm not saying that you think you do. My point is, you're still in the process of cultivating presently in the moment what it is God wants to do in your life, this calling that you have.
Right.
So I think I want to echo your sentiment saying that this generation wants to change the world more than any other generation in my lifetime that I've known of. And so how are you cultivating that calling? Like, what does that look like for you, despite the fact that you're having this success and however we determine that? But what does that look like for you?
Hmm. You know, it's really interesting because this is a really timely question for me because it's a really fresh conversation I'm having. My story is unique in the fact that I had this clear vision of what I was supposed to do at the age of 16.
Right.
If you would have asked me when I was 5 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said a writer. That was always a thing for me. When I was 20, I made a goal to have my first book deal by 24. And so there's just some uniqueness that's not always the case, right? It's not always the case that you get a really clear vision and you just say yes and you have the people around you who believe in you and all of that. So when I really look back in my story, I don't credit it to the fact that I'm a better leader than any other 25-year-old, that I'm more impressive than any other 25-year-old. I'm not. I know myself enough to know that I'm not. But what I do credit, at least a piece of it to, is the fact that I had incredible people around me who called things out of me and gave me opportunity before I really should have been given it. I mean, when I was, 16, I had this vision. I had parents who breathed life into that and believed in it and affirmed it in me, which is so rare. The older I get, the rarer I realize that really was. And then when I was 18, I started working at my church, and my pastor saw leadership capacity in me at the age of 18. I was leading a team of 40 volunteers on staff at a church by the time I was 19. He was putting me up on main stage to give announcements, to try communicating. I mean, I was just being given opportunity after opportunity, again, before I was qualified, before I had anything on my resume to say that I should. And that's really, really rare. And so when I look back on my story, I credit it to the incredible leaders around me. And in the acknowledgments of my book, I talk a lot about these people that came around me.
Right.
I had a woman who I ran into when I was 20 in a grocery store that we had mutual connections, and she asked if she could mentor me in business for free, right? Like just these random crazy stories. My mentor is a pastor and a speaker and an author, and so she helped me write my book proposal, right? Like there's just so many amazing people who said yes to investing in my life, giving their own time up. These are successful, influential people, and who called things out of me that I might never have believed about myself. And so I actually think there's so many more young people that could step into this if there was simply older leaders who took the time to look them in the eye and say, hey, I see leadership in you. Hey, I know you don't have this on your resume yet, but why don't you try speaking? Why don't you try leading? Why don't you try running a staff meeting, right? Why don't we give leadership opportunity away? Because that's how the next generation is going to walk into their leadership really well. So that's one piece of it is I had older leaders who hit it out of the park when it came to investing in me, giving me opportunity. But the other part is, I know we got this far interviewing a 25-year-old female, and now we're bringing up the Enneagram, so we're doing pretty good.
But in my head, listen, the question was there.
Yeah.
I guess. Can we guesses?
Well, hold on.
I want to some guesses because by her language.
If our listeners want to hear the soul and the guts of this show, just listen to the last 3 minutes of this conversation.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Amen.
That's the guts of this show. That's why we decided to do it in the first place. So these past 3 minutes, but there you go.
Wow. We'll get back to that. I want to guess. Enneagram, Rob, I'm going to go 7.
I'm saying 7 because I'm a 7, and I feel like we're kindred spirits.
Yes. You guys, you know me so well. I am a 7.
The adventure word was the giveaway. She said it like 19 times. So I'm on an adventure. And I'm like, that's Rob.
Yeah, every single time. When I saw the mountain pictures in the background of I was like, yes, fellow 7. So I'm a 7, but my 8 wings super strong, right? Like I got that 8 wing coming in. And so because of that, I'm just going to go vulnerable here. I'll go real. I can be really, really tempted to take credit for my success. Like I just can, right? I can be really tempted to say, look how hard I worked. Look how driven I was. look, I'm killing it out here. That's a real temptation for me. And I am actually reading a book with my spiritual counselor right now called Experiencing God, kind of a throwback.
Oh,
Yeah.
Blackaby. That's a great book.
Yeah,
Blackaby.
great
Yep.
That's a classic.
Yeah. Going deep. And really what I feel like God has been speaking to me lately about, because there's so much in there that's all about waiting on God's timing, waiting on His plan, waiting. And that's so not my nature. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm not going to wait. I'm called to go. I'm called to action. Let's change the world. And I've just been really convicted that in this season, I'm supposed to say, yes, that was my reality. Yes, God has accomplished things through me. But in this next season, man, I better become really, really good at recognizing that I cannot move ahead of God's call and ahead of God's voice. And at the end of the day, if I don't accomplish anything more because God tells me to stop, that will be enough because I'm in God's will for my life. So I think that's hard for young leaders, especially because we're such go-getters. We're at the beginning of our lives, beginning of our careers, but that's just a real life learning right now for me is I've got to check myself really often and say, am I in God's will for my life? Or does this just sound really fun to Hannah? You know?
Yeah. No, there's some great points. And I want to go back to the mentor conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't see of Hannah. Like Hannah, in Generation Distinct, it's if you follow them on Instagram and whatever else, or you follow any young leader, they almost the perception, and I use the word perception because it's not the truth, is that they're self-made. We carefully sculpt pictures and settings and get people, and we have these conversations, we say important things, but what I love about what you're saying is that there was a lot of work behind the scenes with people and adult leaders investing heavily in who you were.
Yes.
And
100%.
Listen, that's a primary conversation Rob and I have all the time.
Come on.
So how is that? Let me translate it, because a good friend of mine always says that, and he quotes Jesus to set this up. He says, freely you've received, freely give.
Yeah.
How did what you took from your mentors become translated to something that you could give away?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think again, this comes from one of my mentors. And again, I just want to say, if you're an older leader, thank you for the ways that you're investing in young leaders. If you're a young leader listening to this, I just need to caveat this really quick because this is really important. It is not the job of the older leader to find you. It is your job to find them. So if you're listening and you're like, well, that's great for Hannah, but I don't have anybody in my life, find them. Go online, look for people you respect, shoot them a DM, ask them for a FaceTime, like take ownership of your growth. If you want a mentor in your life, go out and find them. And then the older leader, you have to say yes, but young leader, it has to start with you. So I just need to say that. But when it comes to kind of passing on, early on, when I was starting to kind of enter into this role of leadership, I was asking one of my mentors, Danielle Strickland, and I said, hey, what do I need to know as I'm kind of walking into this calling? What do I need to know? And she looked at me and she said, Hannah, she goes, never get disconnected from your local ministry.
That's truth.
And I mean, she lives that out so well. That's so who she is. And I will never forget that moment. And at the time, I was a 20-year-old who was really involved in my church. I was a high school or a middle school small group leader. And I think a lot of times those young leaders who have opportunity, who have platforms, it's so easy to get disconnected from the local call to simply make disciples. And making disciples is not what we do when we stand on a stage. Making disciples is not what we do when we get on a podcast. Making disciples is the life on life experience that nobody else sees, that we say, this is what it means to live out the Great Commission. And because I saw mentors take the time to invest in me, I recognize this is important too. And so there's been like 10 girls I've discipled intentionally since they were 5th and 6th graders. Now they're juniors and seniors in high school, and we're talking about really different things these days. Now we're talking about where they're going to college and all that. But I was just with them, I mentor them throughout the week, and I'm with them all the time. But it is just truly one of the best parts of my life, because when I go out and hang out with them, they're not impressed by me. Like, they don't think I'm a cool author. They don't listen to my podcast, I'm just Hannah that they've known since I was an awkward 17-year-old, And so I love that kind of local ministry reminds me that this is the life. This is what it means to follow Jesus. The public stuff is not the definition of Christian success, the way that sometimes this generation thinks it is. The definition of Christian success is, are you living out the Great Commission, which is going out and make disciples of all nations? So because I saw mentors do an incredible job of calling out potential in me and giving me opportunity and breathing life into who I was as a follower of Jesus, I get to do it for other young women. And that's such a gift. So I would say the way that I've been able to receive that and pass it on is saying it doesn't end with me. My call is to pass it on to the next generation and then to equip them to go out and disciple the generation after them.
That's so great and so
Hannah
healthy.
dropping some truth bombs.
Did you really go sing song with it? Like, that was a musical podcast?
I felt like it was a Disney moment. I was like, Hannah dropping some truth bombs. Sorry, okay. No,
wow.
I'm not gonna,
I think
we're
this
not
is a
going to do that.
Like that's a whole new level of this podcast.
Man,
that's like you just went a whole different direction.
You know what I'm saying? She got me singing. So a incredible kind of perspective you have, and obviously there's a depth of maturity that you have because you've been both invested in and you've invested in yourself as a leader and as a person, and
sure.
and so into others. And so I think that's quite evident in hearing you talk and hearing you speak. So as a young leader, there are obviously advantages and disadvantages you have to that. So kind of, since you're being transparent and vulnerable, like what are some of those advantages and disadvantages for you as a young leader that you see right now?
Sure. I think one of the advantages, I'm 7, so I'm going to start positive, right?
Yeah.
One of the advantages is that I have a unique way of being able to talk to young people as one of them, right? And so even in the book, I say right in the beginning, hey, this is one young leader talking to other young leaders. This isn't me telling you what to do. This isn't me giving you a list of, rules. This is simply me sharing my story of being a 25-year-old girl in this world, sharing with other individuals who are also in their 20s and 30s. And so it gives me, I think, a unique perspective. And also is just the fact that I'm in this different relevancy to what the world and the next generation is longing for in local church, in ministry, in their walk with Jesus, because my friends and I talk about it when we go hang out, when we go grab dinner, when we're going for a workout, whatever. This is the things that we're naturally talking about. And so I think the part of young people waiting till they're older, this kind of idea that young people have to wait till they're older, I think it's not that they have to wait till you're older. You just have to make sure that there are wise people above you that can check you, right? And so there are opportunities to lead right now, and you have a unique perspective on the world that 50-year-old, 60-year-old aren't going to have. And so we see that, Jesus empowering the next generation to lead at a young age, but also they partnered with other generations. So there is value, I believe, to leading at a young age, especially if you have those checks and balances around you. So I think that's an advantage. I would say a disadvantage is that I don't know what I don't know. Right. I mean, I can be real about that. Like we just added, our team is growing really, really fast at Generation Distinct. So we have a staff of 10 right now. And so I'm leading these individuals and I love leading them. I mean, it's the best team. They're truly some of the most incredible creative humans I know, and I get to lead alongside of them, and it's such a gift. But at the same time, I've never led a staff this big. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. But again, that is why the idea of having people around you is so important. And I would also say, mentors don't have to be there for years. I have one mentor, her name's Aubrey Sampson. She's incredible. And she has been my mentor for 5 years. So she's my long-term. I've gone to the grocery store with her when she's busy and only has, time for me to tag along to her grocery store runs. But then there's other individuals who I've just noticed, wow, they're incredible corporate business person, and I would love to know who they are. And so I jumped on LinkedIn and I sent them a message and I said, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time? I'm trying to learn how to be a better leader. And I've driven very far to their offices to sit down and say, I have 3 questions for you. Tell me, how do you create great staff culture? How do you create buy-in with your team? How do you actually cast vision well? That's it. And then I leave and I have greater value. So I think we don't know what we don't know, which is a disadvantage. But if we're willing to be humble, if we're willing to admit that, if we're willing to do the hard work to actually ask questions and get around leaders who are smarter than us and more experienced than us, I believe it actually it causes us to be humble leaders, because we recognize we're only here if we're experiencing any kind of success, it's because there's wiser people around us giving us that wisdom.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rob and I come from a different generation, and we've talked about this a couple of times. We were the wait your turn generation. We're both
Yes.
Generation Xers, and their boomer generation was much larger than ours, especially those taking place in the church culture. There was a lot of wait your turn kind of situations. That's why they created more staff pastors. You had a youth pastor and a kids pastor, basically because you were waiting your turn to get to a pulpit.
Wow.
What I love about your generation is that there is an entrepreneurial spirit that says, one, we don't have to wait our turn. Two, what I love about it is you're not waiting for their turn. So what you're doing is distinct in the title of your organization, distinct from what other, especially older adults and older leaders, are doing in a unique manner. So how did you go from this whiteboard idea at 16? You've used the word strategy a couple times, because I think a lot of young adults have great ideas. I think they're full of great ideas. What was the switch, or what was sort of maybe the process that goes, hey, here's a great whiteboard idea, to here's the strategy to accomplish that?
Yes. Well, when I was 20, I had this moment where I felt like God was saying it's time to start Generation Distinct. And I didn't feel prepared. I never run an organization, obviously. I had no idea what I was doing, but I really felt like it was time. And so I was working for this nonprofit marketing company at the time. I left that and took like a bunch of just odd jobs just to support myself while I had more space and a flexible schedule to build this thing. And that's one thing I'm really passionate about, like actually sharing, because I think a lot of people just think, oh, you quit your job and it's this glamorous change and you walk into the next adventure, and it's like, no, that's not true. You still need to pay the bills, right? And so I was working these odd jobs, and I was just meeting with anybody who would listen to my idea. I mean, I just tried to pitch it over and over and over and over. But at the same time, we just started doing things. I mean, before we were even ready, before we were even qualified, we had no idea what we were doing. This was me and two of my really close friends who kind of said, yeah, I'll help you with whatever this is. And we just started doing. We just started something. We just started trying. And so the first thing we ever did was this 52-week video series challenge, which is crazy looking back to think that the very first thing we started to do was a 52-week video series, but that's what we chose to do. And so we had multiple video shoot days. Every video was a different individual who we asked to come in and speak. We had 52 different scripts, 52 different challenges. I mean, we just went hard at this thing. But the funny thing is, like, when we filmed it, we didn't even have a tripod. Like, all we had was a camera. So we would set a camera on like stacks of books and crates and stuff, and we would film these somewhat crappy videos, but we were trying to do something, right? Like, we wanted to take action. And essentially it was this challenge where every Monday in an entire year, we released a video with a challenge for how someone could go out and change the world that week. And it was fun. It was great. It's not like it went viral. Nothing crazy happened. But when I look back, I realized that I think was a huge choice for me. Because we could have just said, let's build strategy and let's gain ideas and let's get lots of wisdom. And then once we have all of it perfect, then we'll start doing something. But what I'm really grateful is that we were too naive for that. And we were so naive to just believe we could just do something and we could just build something and we could just try something. And it happened that it was in the process of doing, in the process of trying, that we started to realize what people were looking for and what people were hungry for. And we started to spread this message of what we were all about. And we clarified even for ourselves what it really was. And so it started with that. And then we kept doing these different video projects and trying to see what connected with people. And then 3 years ago, we really clarified our vision after examining all the things we tried, all the conversations I had. And 3 years ago, we really kind of solidified our vision and became an official nonprofit. And that's when we decided, hey, we're going to build a 4-step strategy that young leaders can go through to really identify the wrong they were born to make right. And that's what happened. And literally last month, so September 15th is when everything was completed and the 4-step journey officially launched. We have our first cohort actually going through it right now. And essentially, it's an all online experience and it's a 4-step process. And so step 1 is a video series exposing you to 12 of the most prevalent injustices in our world. Step 2 is actually a 4-month coaching program where you go deep, you identify your passions, and then you get to choose from 1 of 5 tracks to be trained on that passion: entrepreneurship, evangelism, mentorship, activism, visionary track. And through that process, you're building your own custom world change strategy. And then you're going to receive that in a book that every young leader will have a physical world change strategy for how they were uniquely born to change the world. Step 3, they go into an online community, world changers around the country. Step 4 will be the first time they gather in person for an in-person event. Next summer will be the first one, and where they'll really get to bring their world change strategy, and we're going to have mentors there, and they'll get to have one-on-one mentorship time to know how to mobilize that world change strategy. So it went from an idea to an actual concrete strategy that we have in place. And I would credit it all to the fact that we were too naive to know we had to have a plan, and so we just started doing something.
That's so cool. And I think we cannot overlook the importance of what Hannah is saying here, because she's saying, as you go, things become clear, right?
That's right. That's right.
You talked about the Great Commission earlier.
Yes.
And there's a lot of hesitation or even confusion sometimes where you get to the part in Matthew chapter 28 where it says, therefore go, right?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
if you look at the proper translation of that, what it essentially is saying is, as you are going.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So
yes.
it's saying, as you are going, God will reveal those things. Jesus will make those things known. And so I think it's so cool for you to say, on one hand, at 16, you knew exactly kind of what you wanted to do, what God had put in your heart to do. And you took steps, you took action, you learned, you developed, you grew, you committed, you did all of these things to see that come to fruition. But then you actually launched, but you launched with something that you didn't even know was going to work.
Yeah.
As you are going, it has evolved
right.
into what you are. And
That's
I think
right.
that is so critical, because I think a lot of people are paralyzed by not by the idea or the dream, like, I really want to go do this thing. They're paralyzed by the process of
That's
what it's
right.
going to take to get there.
That's it.
And so we feel like, especially to do something great for Jesus, that we have to have all these details worked out,
Yes.
that we have to have all of these, these people in place to make it all happen. And the simple fact is, we just don't.
No.
Because the whole point of journeying with Jesus is the journey with Jesus, right?
That's
As you are going,
Come
right?
on.
And then we forget that He's the great provider, that He's the great healer, that he's the one who does all of this stuff. It's His church, it's His work, right? So He has responsibility and ownership in this when we partner with Him. So I just want to highlight exactly what you're saying in such a powerful way, that for young leaders and those who are wanting to reach young leaders, help them understand as they are going.
Yes.
Right? As they are going, God will do the things.
I've been reading John lately, and I took we've mentioned I've been in my master's program, and one of the classes was a sort of a biblical study class. Not that I didn't study the Bible, but it was like this. It created this whole new lens of studying the Bible and a wider view, and then narrowing it down, and all this different approach. And so I've been reading John, and the end of John 4, not the one with the well, but the royal official, and then the John 5, the guy at the pool of Bethesda. Like, those are the two things that have stood out as I've been studying this last week. Is there's a promise, but we typically don't understand the process. Like, so like the man at the pool of Bethesda is like, hey, I got nobody to get me in the water. And Jesus is like, well, I got a different process. Get up and walk. The royal official's son, he's like, hey, Jesus, come to my house and you can heal him. And Jesus is like, well, the boy's going to live. Just go on home. And the royal official has to go back home trusting the word of God, trusting the word of Jesus, that his boy's going to live, wanting the process to look different. Like, Jesus, come to my
Wow.
house. And I think the great struggle in my transparency, so often I'm trying to look for the process before just rather than just hanging on to the promise.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I
Right.
think, and you talk about God gave you a promise for your generation.
Yep.
And we've tracked with you for a while, Hannah. We knew that part 1 was out, and then part 2 was out, then part 3 was out, and now part 4 is out of this process. And I applaud you, and I think it's one of the struggles that I personally have. I want to know the process before I really chase the promise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
That's right.
what I love about you, and I think a lot of people in your generation, is they're willing to go hard after the promise and not fully knowing the process.
Mm.
And
Yes.
Jesus reveals that sometimes as we go. And I think that's what you're
Yeah.
saying, Rob. And I think
Yeah.
that's so critical, just to let the process sometimes unfold, because it's never going to go the way we think it's going to go, because God
Right.
is always bigger than us, and he's always got bigger thoughts than us, and he's got more going on than we can ever imagine. And it's just,
That's right.
sorry,
That's right.
I haven't preached
But
in a while, so
No, it's-
we'll
I
take
mean,
offering
go
from you.
off. I mean, but the issue is that this generation, we're consumed with the glamorous story.
Yeah.
And so often we are comparing our lives with the Instagram success. And everyone looks successful overnight on Instagram, right? Like, everyone looks like, wow, you just woke up one day and you had a ministry. That's so cool. Why can't I do that? And I have even had people say, like, recently, wow, like, it's so exciting to see how quickly everything has grown. And I want to say, well, the vision came to me when I was 16 years old. Like, it's not that I've been here for decades, but I mean, that was 9 years ago, you know? And so it's not that I got the vision yesterday and I just started building and everything's cool now. There's been so many moments where I felt like defeated. And let's be honest, there's so many moments ahead that I'm going to still feel defeated and that nothing's happening right and all those things. And so I think, again, it's a really big issue in this generation, that we need to know that success is not the things you see on Instagram. Success is not once you arrive at this certain level. Success is obedience.
Yes.
And so obedience has to look like every single
Yes.
day, when it's just you and your house and a computer and nobody cares what you're doing. That's beautiful and that's good and that matters. And if we can really define success as obedience, I think we're going to see a generation actually following Jesus and not just wanting to follow the trend of Jesus.
That's so cool.
good.
Obedience is the key that unlocks everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to even preach that sermon. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, because we do
Yeah.
want to talk about this really cool book that you just released. So
Yeah.
I mean, kind of walk us through it here. I know it's a part of the larger vision of Generation Distinct, and it's kind of of the fruit of that whole piece. But walk us through this. Walk us through the book. Tell us where we can get it and all that kind of good stuff.
Absolutely. So this book is really a chronicle of my own journey. So again, going back to when I was 20, I was working at my church. I was attending small group. I had good friends. I volunteered in my youth group, at my church. And I was living a really good Christian girl life.
Yeah.
But I still felt like something was missing, because I heard these stories of the adventure of following Jesus. I saw these people doing great things in the world. And I just felt like there's something about that I'm not experiencing right now. Like, there has to be more than this good, safe, tidy Christian life that I'm living. And I had a moment that happens really early on in the book, where I took a trip to Colorado with one of my best friends, Faith, and we were sitting on this porch swing, and it was a rainy day. And I remember just whispering these words, I think I want to discover a whole new way to live.
Yeah.
And she looked back at me and said, let's do it. Let's discover a whole new way to live. And that was 5 years ago. And so this book is really the chronicle of what happened over that journey, over that time, and the things I discovered and the places I went, and how I really began to understand that to live this life that God has called us to, it doesn't mean we have to move across this country. It doesn't mean we have to become a missionary in a third world place. It doesn't mean we have to change everything about our lives. Rather, this is about discovering the passion and the purpose that has always been right there if we were only to see it and understand it and discover it. And so we break it up into 4 movements. to really of what it means to live a life that matters, owning your potential, crafting your passion, finding your people, living distinct. And I just really believe that through my journey, through the stories in my life over the last few years, that young leaders will find their spot in that journey and will also get to discover a whole new way to live.
Cool.
That's awesome. Listen, you sent us the book, and I've got a chance to look over it. It's great. The course that you guys are doing is incredible. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the live event. Like, that's the piece. Like, when you get to, I want to be there with those people hanging out, because that's going to be like the synergy of like, all these young adults coming together to chase after the things of God will be incredible. How can people get connected to Generation Distinct, and how can they know if it's for them?
Yes. If you are looking around right now and you are seeing the pain and the injustice and the hurt and the disunity in our world, and it bothers you, not just at a surface level, but at this core level, and there is something stirring inside of you that's saying, I have to do something about this. But here's the kicker. And then you say, but I don't know how. This is for you. We literally created this journey for you. And so we have cohorts. We have another cohort opening in November. And so you can actually go to generationdistinct.com right now and sign up for cohort number 2. And once you do, you'll be automatically brought into this journey. And the first step, you're going to be interacting with 12 sessions around the major injustices in our world and what you can do about it. And then step 2, you're going to build your own world change strategy. You're going to have an answer for what you can do to bring change into the world. So if that sounds like you, if you're a young leader, if you're, college student, young professional, young married, if that's you, I would encourage you, just take a risk and try it. And it's been so exciting to see the stories we've gotten back from beta testers who have said, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, and this brought me clarity. I wasn't sure how to change the world, and this is what I need. We had a woman recently that went through it, and she messaged our team and said, I have been walking away from Jesus because in all of my church background, I've only heard that if I wanted to fight for justice, I couldn't do that while following Jesus. But since taking this course, I now understand that Jesus cares more about justice than I do, and it's changed my faith completely. And that was,
who's preaching this message about justice and not Jesus? Like,
that's a hot button.
I need to find out who that person is.
Yep, you do.
Take him out behind the old proverbial woodshed. And, who is preaching this mess?
I know, right? Yes. Well, where are they getting it?
Like,
I don't know if it's me. I'm
not saying this. I'm just saying, like,
you look at me like I preached it. That wasn't me.
Jeff, don't get me fired up now.
Listen, justice is a hot button for you, Rob. I know. And it's where I think you and Hannah found some common ground on this. And we listen. What breaks the heart of God should break our heart.
That's right. That's it.
And I think what we see around campus and in other settings with young adults is they are broken for injustice and have no idea what to do. I think in this summer, that's what we've seen, especially with the rallies and the all the things, the protests and the injustices we've seen. And they're like, I got to do something. I got to do something about it. And so what I feel like Hannah and her team are doing is giving an outlet for that to be done through a gospel lens.
That's right.
A lens of world change through the power of Jesus and the Holy Spirit being active and alive in the earth.
That's right.
So I would really encourage, if you're a young adult and this is connected with you, please check out Generation Distinct. Please go and see if it's a fit for you. And if you want to join this cohort, we don't endorse a lot of things, but I endorse this. I mean, this is something that we get behind and celebrate. So that's my stance on it. We want to kind of wrap up the show. You've had sort of a different educational journey. We usually talk to everybody about college students. I know you kind of didn't have a traditional college experience, but the final question is, and we'll bend it to how your educational experience went. What is one lesson you learned in your educational experience that did not take place in the classroom?
That's good. So again, yes, I had a very different educational experience. So I did college and high school at the same time because I wanted to get done and do stuff. So I graduated when I was 18. And so a lot of my college journey happened when I was, in high school. And but even more unconventional is how I was homeschooled. And so I was one of those real cool homeschool kids, because that's what they're known for, right? For being really, really cool. But I think the greatest lesson I got is that, so my mom is one of my heroes, and she was the coolest homeschool mom ever. And she worked on her own passions and stuff even while she was homeschooling us. But one thing she did a great job of is creating space for creativity. She's one of the most creative people I know. And every morning for our beginning of school day, my siblings and I and my mom would be in the family room, and she would start our day with free creative writing sessions. And we'd all have to be quiet, and we'd have to get out a notebook, and we'd have to write for like 30 minutes. And it would be, we could write stories or poems or songs or journal or whatever we wanted to. And then this was the biggest part. We had to read it out loud at the end. Mm-hmm. And what I think that taught me is that creativity is beautiful in and of itself, but it's even more powerful when it's shared. That's that I can have confidence to share the things that I've created. And I see so many young leaders, again, who build something and are so afraid to put it out, who are creating things and are so afraid to talk about it. And I'm so grateful that my mom taught me that I can create beautiful things, and I can have the confidence to share those things with others.
That's great. And by the way, that's not just young people. That's two people sitting at this table right now who still struggle with their creativity. We've had so many conversations about
I'm going to make a huge confession here. And very few people know this. In high school, I would write poetry, and we had like one of those like creative arts books at the and like I always wanted to submit something, and I was so afraid of the rejection and the persecution. Yep. Now in the 90s, we had clear dividing lines. If you were an athlete, you were not like, there was no Troy Boltons in our world. Like high school, if you were an athlete, you were an athlete. If you were an artist, you were an artist. Those lines did not cross much. But that's so good. And I've been better about sharing my art and sharing the writing. And it's, but as an adult, it's still a struggle sometimes. And it's awesome. Creativity. Yes. Create space for creativity and share it with the world. I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. So how can people stay connected with you? And how can they stay connected?
Yes. Well, you can go to Instagram, which is where I hang out the most. And I'm Hannah.Gronowski on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter pretty often at Hannah Gronowski. You can go to my website, hannahgronowski.com. I have some cool resources on there, always launching some cool things for next gen leaders. And then also generationsdistinct.com, where you can sign up for the cohort and really start your own journey. And then the book is available wherever books are sold, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, all the places you can grab the book.
Awesome. As we love to say here at the Leadership Drip, you have a seat at our table.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks.
Hey friends, thanks for listening to this episode of the Leadership Drip. We loved having you at the table for this conversation. Would you do us a favor and comment, rate, subscribe, and share on your social media? That way we can get this content to other great leaders. And stay connected with us on Instagram at The Leadership Drip and on Twitter at Leadership Drip. And remember, you have a seat at the table.